You are listening to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast Network. For more great filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, head over to ifhpodcastnetwork.com. Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 400. Let your hustle be louder than your mouth. Anonymous.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to the 400th episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your truly humbled host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Before we get started, guys, I set up a special link to help people affected by the coronavirus, and you can donate to Feed America. There is a lot of people in need out there, and Feed America is a great organization, and they're helping millions of people on a daily basis, and they also need your help. If you want to donate even $5, $10, it goes a long way. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/help. Well, we made it, guys. Episode number 400. I couldn't have imagined getting to episode number 400 when I launched the Indie Film Hustle podcast back in 2015. And when I say we, guys, I truly mean we, because I could not have done it without the Indie Film Hustle tribe. You guys have supported the show and everything that I do for almost over 5 years now. And I am truly humbled, grateful, and most of all, honored to have the privilege of serving not only the tribe, but the filmmaking and screenwriting communities in general. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, because you guys give me the ability to keep doing this every single day. So thank you. And as promised, this episode had to be epic. So how else could I have done it by bringing the OG in the YouTube filmmaking indie film space, Ryan Connelly from Film Riot, is on the show today. Ryan launched Film Riot back in 2006, where he has been helping independent filmmakers create killer VFX on a budget ever since. I've been a monster fan of Ryan, his brother, and what they do over at Film Riot for a long time. And I even joke with Ryan in the episode where I see what Film Riot has become, and I know what I could have done something similar back in 2004, 2005, when I actually released some of the first, if not the first, independent filmmaking tutorials on YouTube, where you could still see them online. But I'm not bitter. I just want to let you guys know that I'm not bitter at all. No, I really am a huge fan of what Ryan does with Film Riot, and he provides such an amazing service to independent filmmakers. And I wanted him on the show. I wanted to sit down and talk to the man, because hustle respects hustle. So this is a fairly epic conversation, and we talk about everything from how he started Film Riot to when he's going to make that first feature film to how we're going to deal with COVID-19 as an industry, especially as indie filmmakers. So without any further ado, please enjoy my epic conversation with Film Riot's Ryan Connelly. I'd like to welcome to the show Ryan Connelly, man. Thank you for being on the show today, sir.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
And so everybody understands where Ryan and I are right now. We're about 45 minutes into our first interview when the coronavirus took out my power. And then we started again, and then his light went out. So we're going to give this we're going to start it again. So if I'm going to ask a lot of the same questions I already asked Ryan before, but we're going to go down this road again. And I think, take 2, take 3, let's see how it goes. But I think it's going to be good.
Third time's a charm.
Regardless. So, like I said before, Ryan, I'm a big fan of what you done with Film Riot and the good work you've been doing for filmmakers since 2009. And, I told you this before, but I'll tell you again. I was my first video. I was one of the first guys ever to put up a tutorial on YouTube with my first short film, Broken, in 2005, which is still up there. And I wish I would have kept going, but I had that conversation with myself, which obviously you didn't, which said, I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to do filmmaking tutorials. I'm Spielberg. I'm going to be the next Tarantino. Tarantino doesn't do tutorials. Why should I do tutorials? And that ridiculousness stopped me from continuing down the path, which I've now fallen in love with again since 2015 when I launched Indie Film Hustle. And it's kind of like I wish I would have bought Apple at $8. It's kind of situation. Right. So, but you and Rocket Jump, I know, those guys and Indie Mogul, you're an OG, man. You're an OG in the filmmaking space, brother.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a minute. When we started it was for me, it was kind of filling something that I wish existed but didn't exist. Cause it was, I was 4 or 5 years out of film school at the time, and I had done some short films, and since film school, before film school, it was another like 40, 50 short films a day. But since film school, it had been a handful of short films, and, nobody's even seen these. And then just getting information even at that time was so difficult. I mean, there was Indie Mogul, which was just basically they just did prop builds and stuff. And then there was Philip Bloom, who was doing like camera reviews. And then, of course, there was Andrew Kramer, who was doing After Effects tutorials, which is basically how all of us learned After Effects. And there was this real big slot not being filled, and a friend of mine wanted to go to film school but didn't have money to go to film school, and he was just venting to me. And then I just thought, what if there was a thing that created a community more than everything? Not that I was like, I'm a film instructor, because I didn't even like to call myself a filmmaker. Like I was, I've had a hard time not making a feature and then calling myself a filmmaker. Even to this day, I'm a little better about it now, but which is silly, I know. But in the early days, it was very much about like what our opening said. In the opening of the show, I said, you want to be a filmmaker? So do I. Let's figure it out. And that was kind of the heart of what I wanted to do, just to put out there and show the process of this, person who is pretty obviously green still, again, only 4 or 5 years outside of film school, but with a little bit of knowledge, thanks to film school and thanks to the experience that I had since then. But putting out this thing of, you want to be a filmmaker, so do I. Now let's go along this journey. And every week was about me trying something new. Somebody sent in an email, hey, how would you do this? And they're like, well, let me figure that out. Here's how I did it. I grabbed some duct tape and a firecracker and, stuff like that, like literally like making light stands out of PVC pipe and, stuff like that. Yeah. Old school stuff, man.
Oh no. The Home Depot lights. Remember the whole Home Depot lights?
Dude. To this day, I have them to this day. They're in my studio. We still use it. I've used those clamp lights, and I even made this like bathroom fixture light, which Shane Hurlbut showed me like years and years ago, this thing that he made where it's like this 2x4, and I'm sure he's put it out since then, but it's this 2x4, and he put like light sockets across it, and it created this really beautiful light. So I just went and bought a bathroom fixture, and then I mounted like a little baby arm to it, and then use that as a light. We showed how to build that on the show, and I did construction work before once I came out of film school. My dad was an electrical contractor, so I went to work with him for several years, just making money to 3 jobs at one time sort of thing, making money to get gear. And then that eventually led me to be able to build enough of a reel to where I got work at Alienware, which is Dell's gaming division. And so I had a little bit of electrical knowledge, so I could build those things too. And I still use those things to this day. At least one of them show up on every film set of mine to this day. So it's like, they still have their uses. It's not always the, $20,000 light.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I still have things that I built that I kind of bring onto set every once in a while, and people are like, what's that? I'm like, let me show you. And they're like, that's awesome. I'm like, and I love the look of a tungsten bulb dimmed halfway, that just real nice orange. It's just so nice. I love using that, especially just as practicals within the scene, obviously. But I really wanted to, even then, is like, I've always tried to be very objective about where I'm at in my career and where I'm going. And I knew very well that I was nowhere near ready to make a feature in the beginning. And so it was very much like, man, what if this could start now? And I don't know how many years, but I know I'm many, many years away from being able to make a feature, whether I just make it myself or if somebody actually takes a shot on me. What if this thing just tracked that? And along the way, we built the community and, figured it out together. And because like we talked about before, there's no overnight success. None.
A lot of people have talked about how David Sandberg went from, he made this one short film with his, with Lotta, his wife in Sweden, and then boom, he's making a feature film. Yeah, but no, it's like a decade of stuff before that, just like the rest of us. So it's like, what if there could be this thing that showed that this, even 5 years after film school, it's been another 10 years since then. We're going on, 11 years since then of, trying to get to the point of a feature, just busting ass every single week because there's an episode every single week, sometimes 2 times a week, just showing that work being put in constantly, hopefully curbing what we've seen kind of pop up with, that, Willy Wonka golden ticket, mindset that not all, but so you do see some people talking that way. Like when we do competitions, there's inevitably somebody who is mad that they weren't even an honorable mention. Like, I'm disappointed that I'm not even an honorable mention. Well, that should just tell you that not yet. You need more experience. Work harder. Don't let that discourage you. Instead, let that be okay, let me show you what I can do next time because of what I learned from this time. And let that be, the trajectory. This one's still not good enough. Well, the next one will be. Okay, this one isn't. Well, the next one will be. And that's been my mindset and kind of what we wanted to bring to Film Riot. And, not so much to try to be like, a video essay of here's why they did that, because I think that's just BS stuff. It's not useful. It's, we just wanted to be something of like, here's the hard work and, good attitude that might, get you to a place.
Isn't it true that most, I'd argue to most filmmakers, they just don't understand what a long road this is. They don't.
I didn't
either. Like, I thought I was like, shoot, I should be at the Oscars like next year. I'm like, I'm golden. Yeah. I give myself
start prepping my speech, baby.
I mean, I got 5 years solid to get to the Oscars. I mean, that's just, come on. So there's a level of delusion, which I think you have to be delusional in a general sense to be in this business, because it's not a solid logical path to walk. So you've got to be a little bit crazy, but the egos that are involved in our industry, we've all had them. I still have mine, but it's tamed. Age tames it a bit. Sometimes depends on the person, I guess. I just been beaten up so much. I'd be like, yeah, okay, it's fine. It's fine.
So much rejection.
It's so much rejection. Like, I always say I've taken shrapnel for 25 years in this business. I've just been taking shrapnel. I got it in my.
I walk slower these days.
I walk slower. I got a limp and my knee hurts when it rains. But that's. That's kind of how it is in this business. But they don't realize that this is absolutely a marathon and not this sprint. That the sprint that they think it's going to have. And that's what Hollywood sells. So Hollywood sells the golden ticket idea. Because it's a great story. The Robert Rodriguez story is fantastic. The Tarantino story, the Spike Lee story, the John Singleton story, all these stories that we kind of grew up with, Paranormal Activity, all these kind of stories. They're magical. Yeah. They're mythical in a sense. But that's not, they're outliers. They happen, once in a gen. I'm still talking about like 4 of the 5 of those guys, all of those guys came up in the 90s. 4 out of 5 of those guys were in the early 90s. And we're like 2020 as of this recording. So like it shows you how many of these stories, Lights Out, that's one of those stories, but that's also, it's an outlier. It's a thing. And I don't think they understand you got to go in every day and just do the work every day.
Yeah.
Show
and
up.
I mean, even David's story, it just appears to be that. And that's what I that's what I love about Film Riot, that hopefully it will, if fingers crossed, I can get to that feature, that it'll, it's right there to watch from 2009 to whenever the feature happens, of how long it took. Whereas like, David, I know David, and I know how much work he put in before time. All the short films he did, all the time he put in figuring out how to craft these ideas, how to connect with an audience, how to direct a scene, what coverage he needs to accomplish the thing that he wants. So it wasn't this thing where he made a short and it got noticed, and, it's because of all the work he put in trying thing after thing and putting thing after thing up, and, this competition, that competition, until finally the right person saw the right thing when he was at the right time in his, path to then move to, that point. And a lot of people I know, that's what's really great about where we're at now, is like, it is possible for you to put something up. Another friend of mine just finished writing and directing his first feature starring Idris Elba. He did a short film called The Cage in 2017. Incredible film, just awesome, great short, but it only has like 60,000 views. That's it. But that got passed around to the right people because it was just great work, and that got this person attached, that person attached. This producer wanted to talk to him, and he was ready for it and said, here's the other stuff that I have that I want to do, because he's been putting in so much work behind the scenes preparing other things, that he could be like, when, I loved your short, what else you got? Oh, I got this, because I've been putting in the work nonstop behind the scenes with no congratulations, because it's thankless work to do, because nobody even knows it exists. But he was ready for it when the opportunity came knocking, and that, turned into making his first feature with friggin' Idris Elba, and I have a similar story to what's going on now. It's like, again, it's more outward, it's more open. Even our failures have been very open. We were going to have it was going to be a $300,000 short film, and it just all fell apart last minute. And that was very much an open failure. And, but that turned into one of my favorite short films I've made, Proximity. So that, great. Sure. That's where it went. So all of the path for what I've done is very, very much open, but there's a lot behind the scenes that I just don't talk about, that I'm constantly working on top of the stuff that I've seen. And it's that stuff that kind of just, it's the ammo that if you ever have the chance, like Ballistic opened up some chances. So when people came calling, I could be like, well, here's the other stuff I have. Here are the other ideas I have. And then, I mean, the interesting story about that is, it's all stuff that's going on now. So it's not stuff that I can talk about in detail, but it's like Ballistic led to getting managers, some producers being interested. And then that led to developing a feature, but I'm a first time director with an original action sci-fi property. That would be a very large budget. So good and well how possible that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we landed. And we're like, yeah, we got a producer attached. That was a very exciting producer. And he was the one that was like, I really love this, but out like a script, I don't know, I don't see the path for this. And then so I was able to be like, well, here's another one, and this is a sub 10 thing, and it's it's horror, and that's There Comes a Knocking, which I made a short out of. So then I wrote the feature with that, because I already had this like 70-page scriptman already written, because I had just been putting in the work behind the scenes, assuming these were, you always got to have that ammo. And they all really responded to that. And so we developed that a little further and then decided that a short film would be the right way to go before sending out the script. And so we did that. So we were able to couple the short film with the script. And now you're talking like a year and a half since, it started since Ballistic. So now they went from Ballistic to this, and now we're a year into this, and I still have, it's still thankless, but now, okay, at least I get to make this short film. So I do that. And then finally we send it out and it's just silence for months. But then all of a sudden meetings start to pop up. But now maybe it's not going to be this thing. Maybe it could be this other thing, because then you're in these meetings and you're talking. And then even if they don't like the current project they're doing, they like you. And then they say, well, what else you got? And if you just put all your eggs in just one basket and you're not constantly, like your hat says, hustle, baby, constantly putting in the work behind the scenes that nobody knows about except your closest friends and collaborators. My answer would be like, oh, well, I have some ideas, but instead my answer is I have these other pitches completely done, and I have pitch docs. And if you're interested, send it to you. I could pitch it right now if you want. And there, well, that one sounds interesting. Let me hear it. Okay, well, let me tell you about it. And then boom, you can, because you've already put in the time pitching this idea to friends just in case the right person asks you. And then that opportunity presents itself, and then you can deliver it. So it's just, it's all that stuff, I think, is what leads to success. And they're not, it's not my original ideas. This is just going off the backs of the smart people who, I've been lucky enough to pick their brains for the past, 6 years. And just, I took their good counsel and, followed those things. Yeah.
I mean, the thing, like with my first short film, Broken, the one that I uploaded those tutorials in 2005 with, that short got around a lot because there wasn't anything like that. I was a mini DV short with like 100 visual effect shots in it. It was a sci-fi.
That's like crazy unique.
It was really unique, and it looked like film, and it was like, film, if you look at it now, it'd be like, yeah, dude, it looks 24p. But back then people were like, holy crap, what did you do? It was very moody, and it was like shot in a great location. And it got around town, and I started getting calls from producers, agents, managers. I even had like some Oscar-winning producers contact me. I was 24, 25, 27, something like that.
Oh man, that is too young for me to have that. I'm so happy it didn't happen that young.
No,
I would be pissing myself.
Well, this is what happened. So I would go into these meetings and they're like, this is great. And they're like, do you have a script version of the short? And I'm like, we're working on it. Mistake number one. Do you have anything else?
Yeah.
I have ideas. Mistake number two. And by the time that the heat, like I was pitching to studios, I was doing stuff, but I didn't have anything ready because no one had ever told me to do what you're doing, or what I've done since is to have other projects prepared, other pitches prepared. And by the time I got around with the script, it was obviously like $125 million, extravaganza.
Right.
And, all the people that were interested in me, I was like yesterday's news. And I was just like, no, the spotlight is on you for a minute, and you've got to strike when that minute's ready and have a lot of stuff ready to rock and roll. If you're trying to play the studio game, which is, depending on the size of the work you want to do and the projects you want to do, unless you're independently wealthy or can raise that kind of funding yourself, you're going to have to work within the studio system. I opted out. My first two features were I opted out of the studio. I'm like, fuck that, screw it. I'm just going to do it myself. And I'm just going to do it real low budge, and I'm just going to do my own stuff. And that's fine. But again, like I always say, Kevin Feige, if you're listening, I'll take the meeting. You just let me. I'm here. I'm down to talk, Kevin. Anytime. I got some ideas for the next Avengers, but But it was funny. I was in an agent's office, and this really was kind of jarring to me. I had another short film I did like 5 years later that got a lot of attention as well. And I got to do the tour, the water bottle tour again. I was already here in LA at that time. Yeah. And I did the water bottle tour around town. And I walked into an agent's room, and they were like, hey, we really love your short, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, listen, I want you to watch a couple of shorts that we have. I want to see what you think of it. And they had these other shorts, and this is like 2011. So we're still early on. There's, the YouTube thing had not really people weren't watching shorts yet like that at a high level like they are now. It wasn't as it was today. So I was watching DVDs of shorts, and some of these shorts were from directors from overseas and people had never heard of, and they were amazing. Like insane, like Zack Schneider production quality, David Fincher production quality on short stuff. And I'm like, why haven't I heard about this? Why haven't I seen this? And he's like, this is the other projects we're looking at. These are the other directors, but we're working on developing other stuff with them. And at that moment, and by the way, most of those guys, I think almost every single one of those shorts, they never materialized. Those projects never went anywhere because I remember the names. I wrote down the guy's name. I'm like, I want to see if this guy goes anywhere. And a lot of them didn't go anywhere. They might have gone into commercials or music videos or something else, but they didn't get to make their features in the studio system. And that was the moment I realized, like, oh, talent doesn't mean everything. Talent is great and skill is great, but it's also with timing. It's about timing. I mean, if El Mariachi or Clerks showed up today, we would have never heard of who Robert Rodriguez or Kevin Smith is, period. And they've said it themselves. Yep. Like, it just wouldn't have made it because that was that moment of time for that kind of product. I think like a young Robert Rodriguez today would have done what you guys were doing like these really awesome, visual effects laid in short films and putting them up on YouTube and stuff like that. But what he was able to do in 91, it was a different time. So it's about timing as well. And it's weird. And that's the thing. You've kind of got to be ready at all times. Like you're training constantly for the Apollo fight. You're always, you can't be like hanging out, eating bombs, because one day Apollo is going to call you. Hey, do you want a shot at the title? And you've got to be constantly in shape, constantly ready for when that opportunity comes. And that could take 10 years.
Yeah. And it's kind of like you have to have heat and you can try to create heat for yourself and that heat dwindles out very quickly. And then you got to wait till heat has been created, but it's like the lottery. You're just playing the lottery over and over and over again. You can't, there's very few things you can do to like, this is going to create heat for me. It's like, you just try over and over. And some of the stuff that I did this short film called Sentinel right before Ballistic. And it actually got me, contacted by several producers. I never would have guessed this in a million years. It was this short little piece that I just did for fun and kind of just to try something where it was just a visual effects and one guy. I didn't even write a script. I made it all up as I went. We had a crew of like 6 people in the middle of nowhere and it cost me sandwiches, and that got me more attention than the $30,000 short film I did with a 30-person crew and these actors that I flew in and all this stuff. That got me zero attention. Nobody contacted me after that one. And similar to you, like, I had a similar, I didn't really do the water but after Proximity, I was contacted by some managers, some agents, and 2 different producers, and all of them asked me the same thing, and I had the same answer as you. No. Well, what's the feature version of this? Oh, I didn't even think about. Oh, wait. A feature version of this? That would be cool, wouldn't it? I wasn't even ready for that. Like, you should write that. Like you're telling them, you should write that. I'll direct it. Good. You should. Why don't you develop it and call me when it's ready? Yeah, totally. And then it's like, well, what else are you working on? And well, it was this. I was working on this. I got a PA gig. I got a PA gig next week. So that's all of that just evaporated because it just tells them like, oh, this person's not even kind of ready. Anyway, moving on. We'll see what they come up with down the line. So that taught me a lot. And then talking to friends and whatnot, them telling me those things. Then after that, it was like everything I did, I tried to make sure there was something that I could talk about after that. And it's just like, after that, it's just constantly trying to make a little bit of heat for yourself. Like Ballistic got some heat, which got me some stuff going. And then that heat dwindled. But then doing the short film, There Comes a Knocking, actually brought that heat back up. That was like the main reason for making it, because we had the script, but if we also have the short, that puts some heat because it's something actionable. It's something right now that they can look at that, thankfully Ballistic created enough heat to have the managers that would then allow this to get passed around, because without Ballistic, that doesn't happen. And then, There Comes a Knocking shows what it's. But even what's funny is like everything's going to lead to something if you let it. Like I did a short film called Ghost House back in, I think it was 2016. So I did a short film called Ghost House in 2016. It was just for fun. It was basically like a punchline of a short film, like horror movies in real life. Like your house is haunted. No one's staying there. You're burning that thing to the ground. Like that's the short film in a nutshell. And a friend of mine saw it, and he passed it to a friend of his who was an assistant at 3 Arts at the time. I don't believe he was a manager yet. And he was like, "Oh, this is cool. I'd love to chat with him." So we just talked, just, "Hey, who are you? I'm me. You know, this is what we do." "Oh, that's cool. All right, man. Well, it's great to meet you." And that was it. From 2016 to the end of 2018, when Ballistic hit, and then all of a sudden there's all these different producers. There was like 5 producers at the same time, all saying they wanted to develop a feature with me. And I'm like, how do you navigate this? And so I asked a director friend of mine, he's like, "Dude, you need a manager now." And I'm like, "Great. So how do I do that?" You know? And then I had remembered, oh, this guy at 3 Arts, we really hit it off. Maybe he has. And so I emailed and I'm like, "Man, I don't want to take any of your time, but I'd love to just pick your brain. Here's what's going on, and I'm not sure what to do next." Not knowing that he's now a manager at 3 Arts. And then he's like, "Hey, can we jump on a call?" And then we jump on the call, and he really responded to the short. And that's how I got my manager. You know, and now him and Luke Maxwell and Will Robotham are at 3 Arts are now helping me navigate all this stuff. But it's because of a relationship that hey man, what's up? In 2016 for a short that nobody cared about, you know? So it's like, it's all those little things, like you said, always being ready for whatever it is. And like all these little ingredients eventually amount to hopefully that final baked delicious cake, you know?
The one that they've been telling us about since we started this damn journey.
Let me have the cake, damn it.
Talking about getting heat. So I actually, I had that first short film broken, and the heat kind of fell off a little bit, but then I submitted that short to a little show called Project Greenlight.
Oh, really?
As a sample of my directing, and I made it to the top 20 of second season of Project Greenlight, and actually I'm in the first episode of Project Greenlight season 2.
No way! Are you really?
I am, for 5 seconds, and you hear, and I did this like my video, like whatever that video is that you had to put in, like to submit yourself, like I can do this kind of stuff. I was 20, whatever. I was some 20 something. And I actually posted the video on my YouTube channel because it was so embarrassing. It was so ridiculous. Like I was so egocentric. I was so like, it was, and I just like, all right, guys, I just want you to see what happens. And when that aired on HBO, because that was a big thing for our industry, like Project Greenlight, everybody in the business watched Project Greenlight because they all wanted to see the train wreck. It was a great show. Yeah. And then I got calls from the managers and agents that had like not, that have like, "Oh yeah, he's whenever. Hey, what are you up to? I just saw you on Project Greenlight. Was that you on Project Greenlight?" And it's just me.
Oh my God.
For like 5 seconds in the opening montage saying, "I can do this. I can do it. I've lived this. I breathe this. I can do this I've been wanting to do this for my entire life." Something along those lines. And then they cut to somebody else. It's like the montage of all the filmmakers that didn't make it. And it's just and it's just my face, like so intense with completely jet black hair. I had no gray back then.
I need to see this. I
will, for everyone listening, I will put it in the show notes, because I will put it in the show notes because it needs to happen.
That is fantastic.
It's so
great. That's the thing. Like everything we put online, it's there forever. You know,
it's brutal, man.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, I wanted to ask you, man. You've been doing Film Riot for 11 years, man. How do you keep going? Because I've been doing mine now. It's going to be 5 years in July. And I've seen a lot of people come and go. I know you've seen a lot of people come and go, as far as YouTubers, as far as podcasts, as far as film blogs that come and they go and they don't really stay, or they do a nice run for 3 or 4 years and then they're out. There's a level of endurance that is needed to do this kind of work. And while you're still also chasing your dream and also doing work that you want to do. And also building your business, because you've got to feed that business. I don't know about you, but for me, I find it so rewarding helping people. It's addictive. Yes. It's addictive now. I can't live without doing something like this, because I see the impact that my work is doing for people. And then I still get the pleasure to do my own work and direct my own movies and do my own projects and stuff like that. But the endurance is something that a lot of people jumping into this filmmaking space, either on YouTube or podcasting or blog, they have no understanding what it takes. Like I'm on episode I'm getting close to 400 on this podcast. And you know, you guys, how many videos do you guys have? Like
we're almost at, because we don't count everything we put up, but as far as like episodes of Film Riot go, we're almost at 1,000. But if you would count everything, we're well over 1,000. But then we used to have a show called Film State, which was like a movie news show, and that had something like 400 episodes. So, you know, all together with like all short films, all videos we've done, you know,
2,000.
It's probably around 2,000. Yeah.
So that's an insane amount of work to create that much content and consistently do it, which is one of the reasons why you're one of the brands that has survived and are left at the mountaintop, if you will. There's a handful of those brands that have been around for a long time that are still around. But I remember brands and companies that were around when I was starting out there, gone. It's just, you know? Yeah, it is an endurance game. Like you're definitely right about that. But I mean, I think just like the industry, you have to have a sickness, you know, there's like, you know, it takes a broken brain like we have, you know, it's just like where insanity. It's insanity.
Insanity. It's just, you cannot help yourself. I mean, a story I told earlier on another show was, you know, Ballistic, when we shot that, there was two legs to Ballistic. Was an action sci-fi I did and released in like 2018. And there was an LA leg to it and there was a Texas leg to it. The Texas was all night stuff. It was thriller-ish. And the LA stuff was all day action. And there was about 100 plus people on set. We had like 6 to 8 cameras. We had practical explosions, wire work, dude lit on fire, you know,
nice.
This car that we were launching and blowing up, and madness. And I had to orchestrate this chaos. And dude, I dry heaved in the morning, and on the way to set every morning, I was like, I want to go back to the hotel. I want to go back to the hotel. I want to go back to the hotel.
Oh yeah.
But then the second those monitors come up, all that falls away. It becomes blinders and you're just in it, and it's like game on. And you get through that process, and it's the most stressful. You can't eat, you know, and it's horrible and amazing. And you get through the process, and you're at the end of it, and you haven't slept, and you feel like shit, and you're like, God, that was hard. I can't wait to do it again. And so we're just sick. We're sick individuals, you know? And then, I mean, just even like what we've been talking about trying to make it, like, it's Jesus. It's like 16 years since film school for me, longer for you. And we're still beating our head against the wall because we just can't help ourselves. It's that somebody asked me yesterday, they said, you know, I haven't been doing this, that long, but I feel like I'm not getting better. And I, you know, it just feels like maybe this industry is not a super viable industry. And I'm like, what can I do? You know, how do you think? I'm like, the only question you have to ask yourself is, can you do something else? If you could do something else and be happy, this isn't for you. Do that thing.
Yeah.
If you cannot do something else, then pursue this, but, you know, still be smart. I mean, you know, I will not stop until I either die or make a movie. I don't, one or the other, you know, but you still got to be smart just as you have, and be able to pay your bills and provide for your family. So there is that, no matter what, having your financial backup plans as you're still pursuing your goal. You got to be smart, but, there's no anything else. I couldn't do anything else, and I would be miserable. In fact, there was, just like to emphasize the point, there was a time, I think it was around early 2017, where I was getting so burnt out. I was just like not super happy about life. and my wife and everybody was like, dude, you need to take a break. Cause I was working almost 7 days a week. Like once my kids were born, I took it from 7 days a week to 6 days a week, but I was still working like insane amount of hours a week. And I was starting to get so burnt out, and I hadn't taken a vacation since my honeymoon, which was like, you know, 7 years ago. And my brother was like, all right, I'm forcing you. I'm pulling the plug. You have to go on a vacation. I was like, fine. Okay. Yes, I'll go on a vacation. Went on a vacation for 7 days, and I came back feeling physically more refreshed, but mentally I felt the exact same. I'm like, what is going on? We just went on a week-long gorgeous beach vacation. I should be so like ready to get back to work. And then I started a new project, and all of that like miserable feeling just went away. And what I realized was it had been like over a year since I was working on something outside of just general weekly Film Riot, like a short film or just even writing something. And I was like, oh, that's what was making me, that's what it was. And which we know that we have to do this thing. It's a sickness.
It's a sickness.
And
it's a sickness.
Just to have that like clear evidence of like, oh yeah, I have to be doing this or I'm legit miserable. It doesn't make any sense, but if you have that sickness, it makes it a little easier because you just can't help yourself. And then like you said, it is a bit of a drug to help people, like to see it actually help them is like more rewarding than anything that we do. Like if in the end, all I do is Film Riot, I never get my chance to make my feature because either A, I can't bring the finances together myself, or B, a studio, which is not going to happen. I'm going to do it no matter what's going to happen. But even if that were the case, the reward that Film Riot has been for me, for us, would be totally worth it. Like there's been some meetings that I've had for people that, are way more advanced than me. And they're like, hey, I used to watch Film Riot when I was in film school. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Are you serious? That's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've had that too. That's insane.
Is it? And it's the best feeling. And then when they tell you, not only did they watch it, but then they say like, that really helped me, or this is what made me realize this is what I wanted to do. That's like, dude, nothing is more of a gift than hearing that. So that's like a huge, motivator. And I think that feedback, not just being able to make stuff, like just being able to be creative on a weekly basis and the education it has been for us, but that feedback or, the feedback of somebody telling us that it's entertainment for them, that lets them get their mind off this or that stuff, I think is really what fuels the tank for us to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Cause it does get tiring. But just having that community, that definitely is the fuel for the main fuel in the tank, I think.
Yeah, without question, man. And can we talk a little bit about the positive side of failing? Because so many,
I did a whole episode on it.
Because so many people are like, I don't want to fail. I'm like, you have to. It's fail big and fail often, because that's the only way you're going to learn. You don't win. If you hit a home run every single time you're up at bat, you will never understand when it doesn't happen, you won't be able to handle it because you won't have the resources inside of you, the coping mechanisms to deal with the failure. You should fail often, all the time. So when those things happen that are like amazing, then you're like, oh, this is nice. But something's going to happen. I see it. Let's go back to work.
And then it's also multifaceted. Like I've said since the beginning of Film Riot, my phrase has been like, failure is the bridge to success. I don't know if I stole that from somebody or if that's my own thing. I actually don't know at this point, but I had been doing it long enough to know how important failure was. And especially now I understand even more that two things. One, you can't appreciate what you have unless it's been hard as hell to get it. If you eat the best $100 steak in the world every night for dinner, it's not going to mean, but if you just have shitty fast food all the time and then you get to take a bite of that steak, then it's like, oh my God. So one, you're appreciating what you have, and it just makes you a more well-rounded person. All that failure is going to make you, like specifically for me, for a director, all the failure that we've had has made me a better director because it makes me empathize with my crew more, and it lets you lead them better with more empathy and, sensitivity. And then I don't know how you can be a well-rounded, good storyteller that connects with an audience without experiencing that failure. The understanding of that failure is, one, it's just the human experience, and it's going to put everything in perspective for you. But two, every single failure is the best education you've ever had. Like, I don't learn off of success. When I show somebody a script and they're like, this was fantastic, I'm like, cool. But what didn't work though? If that all you say to me is this is fantastic and there was nothing that didn't work for you, there's nothing I can process. There's nothing I can learn from. But if it comes back with this didn't work, even if it's not this is why I think it didn't work. That's not always needed. It's just like, okay, this isn't landing for you. Why is that? And being able to analyze those things. So it's those failures, those negative outcomes that allow you to, proceed, get better, advance as a human and a storyteller, and just a craftsman overall, I think.
There was there's this young filmmaker. His name's Spielberg. He
never heard of him.
Never heard of him. He did a few things early in the 70s and 80s. But
okay. Not really into
exactly, not really into cinema. But almost did a spit take. Almost did a spit. Almost caused a spit take on that one. This real close. I was so close. No. A lot of people look at Spielberg and they're like, oh, Spielberg's, he's the most successful film director of all time. He's made the most money, all this kind of stuff, or close to it. And a lot of people don't realize, because, he did Jaws. Well, he did Sugarland Express, which was a success for what it was. Then he did Jaws, which exploded. Then he did Close Encounters, which was a hit. Then he did the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark as well. So he was like hitting home runs at a level. But then there was this little film that no one talks about called 1941.
And everybody pretends just didn't happen.
Everyone pretends it. And it was this huge, like big kind of like John Landis style comedy with John Belushi and all this kind of stuff. And it was bomb. It was like a really bad bomb. Yeah. And I've heard him do interviews about it. He was just like, I didn't even know what to do. He was not prepared for that kind of failure. Like, cause he had just been rocketing up to the top. So when he fell, it took him a minute to recoup himself. And then he did E.T. and he's had ups and downs for the rest.
It's fine.
No, but he's had up and downs, Empire of the Sun, Color Purple, that weren't these big monster hits that he wanted them to be. So he's been up and down constantly throughout his career. But it was very interesting. Even someone like him, and all of them have had it. I think even like Cameron and Scorsese and Nolan, has Nolan had a bomb? I don't know if he's had
I don't believe so.
I don't think a bomb. He's pretty much been on a meteoric hit. He's like a mutant. He doesn't really.
No, he's a robot. He's not a real person.
I actually saw him I saw him on the back lot once from a distance. I was on the Warner Brothers back lot and I saw him walking.
Did you just like?
No. I actually tried to absorb whatever musk he was putting off, the aura of Mr. Nolan. And I saw him walk like he was walking. But when he walked, it was like a walking of purpose. Like he's just like, I don't have time for anything. I am working. He's a mutant. He's one of those those creatures that just keeps going. It's a very unique. He is a genius. Absolutely, absolutely. You just there's very few directors you show up just because it's them. Tarantino makes a movie, you're going to watch it no matter what it is. Nolan, Fincher. They make something, you feel like, we got to watch this. This is happening.
You're speaking my language.
Come, I can't. I'm so sad at Mindhunter. No more episodes. They canceled it. I'm like, and he had 5 seasons set up, but Fincher's crazy. David's crazy.
He is crazy.
He's
crazy.
David is crazy, but he's also a certified genius. His whole family is prodigies. I don't know if you knew this or not.
I didn't.
His entire families are prodigies, like in music and in other areas. And I've known a few people who've worked with him.
What did they eat?
I don't know, but they are like at a he's at a whole other. He's playing chess, and the rest of us are playing marbles. Like it's like not even checkers; it's freaking marbles. Like he's at a completely different place. And when you meet, and I've had the pleasure of meeting and speaking to some of these people who are at that level. And it's always fascinating. It's like you're like, I would have loved to meet Kubrick. Like I would have just loved to have that conversation just for 5 minutes with
Scariest
Kubrick.
Meeting of your life.
Like, exactly, who else could have Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, the 2 biggest movie stars of at that time, locked up for a year and a half doing a drama. and just beating down Tom Cruise with 700 takes of the same damn thing. He's like, I don't really see anything until like take 72. That's when we really start getting the engine rolling.
We'll get there. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Actually, I'll be in the trailer. Once you're on take 80, just call me. I'll come out and we'll start shooting the movie.
Exactly. It's insane, man. Now, there is something we haven't spoken about at all in this episode, which we should probably talk about. There's that elephant in the room, which is called the corona, the cerveza sickness, that is going on. And it is devastating not only the world, but since this is a film show, we're going to talk about how it's devastating our industry. And I'd love to hear your point of view, where you think things are going, how things are changing and will change and will not go back to the way they were. There is a lot of stuff happening. This is a once in a generation, once in a lifetime event. This has never happened in the history of the world in the way it is happening now. And our industry has never dealt with, any industry hasn't dealt with this, but let alone our industry has never dealt with anything like this. I mean, I can't fathom a summer without a blockbuster summer. I can't, because I'm not going to the movies this summer. I don't care if Dr. Fauci shows up and says, we're good. Yeah. We've got the vaccine.
Screw that.
Yeah. Like he says, we're good. We've got the drugs to take care of this. If you get it, it's just kind of like getting a sniffle. You're good. You're solid. Don't worry. Everyone go back outside. If Dr. Fauci said that, which he won't, but if he would say that, I still would not. It's going to take me a while before I shake a hand again, or go into a public place, let alone
I got a big TV.
Or an enclosed movie theater. So that's the first question, man, as far as how the business is. You know, the theatrical experience, you and I grew up on the theatrical experience. You know, you're a bit younger than me, but we both remember video stores. You know, and we both remember, you know, I remember 1989 Batman like it was yesterday. You know, like
the McDonald's cups. Oh my God.
All of that, dude. I still have the cards. I have it from Batman.
Do
Batman. I still have them somewhere in my,
that's amazing.
I have them all like in the card thing, all organized and stuff with the wrappers and stuff. But like, I remember that excitement of, there was like VHSs were around, obviously, and video stores were around, but that theatrical thing, which I don't see it as much anymore, maybe because I'm older.
Right.
But even when Avengers showed up, which I obviously went to go see Avengers in the theater, Endgame, there's so much competition for our eyeballs now. There's so much more to watch.
Yeah.
But the theatrical experience is kind of a holdover from the past, and it should be a movement of the future. I think there'll always be some sort of theatrical experience, but there always will be. There always will be the IMAX experience. AMC theaters, when you go in there, like those couch things that they got going on now, like they've had to take their game up. But what do you like? I just read that AMC is probably going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Like how do you see this going?
Yeah.
Man?
I just have a lot of questions. You know, it's like, you know, is this something where, you know, you're going to have a repeat of like 1918, 1919, where you saw a studio step into the theatrical system, or who knows? I don't know. I think for sure, you know, it seems to me that lower end theaters are going to have a real hard time surviving this one. And I think the theatrical experience will exist, because I think people want to get out of their house. Obviously, you know, we're seeing that pretty heavily, that people are going stir crazy. And then just the experience of seeing a movie there's just a whole different level. You can't pause it. There's a different level of reverence and like respect and that communal experience that I don't think will ever go away. You know, I think that'll always be there one way or another, but it definitely seems like it's changing quite a bit. And I've talked to a few people that are, you know, know way more than I did, and then ended up consulting with a few companies, which obviously I can't say about, but consulted with because they're looking at other avenues because of the lay of the land. Yeah. And the companies that I was talking to before, it was kind of blowing my mind, because it's like, man, what does this mean if you're talking to me? Because, you know, they're talking to, you know, guys like us because we're in this space. We're in the YouTube space. We're in the streaming space. We understand that market, the lower indie market. And so they're starting to turn their gaze in that direction of what could we do to add another leg in that area, because this thing is sort of, and that's kind of like, man, what does that mean? And I don't have an answer.
Like, if they're talking to us, we're in trouble.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I don't know what that means, and I don't have an answer for it. I just know that that thought process and those questions are being asked. And that's like, man, and pretty much everybody I talk to says the same thing. Like, I'm not 100% sure. We're kind of taking it one day at a time and we'll see what happens. But everybody, keeps saying things are fundamentally going to be changed, but then no one's following up with what that change is exactly. And so I think no one really knows. The optimist in me, and I just, it's just what I think. I think we're going to get back to great stories. I think we're going to get back to great storytellers telling those great stories. Entertainment and the arts are so interwoven with our daily life and so important to us as just. So I mean, that's that. But like, at what from what platform will be the main source? Like, you see, like, Trolls 2 came out today, straight to streaming. That was going to be, a big moneymaker in theaters for sure. And, for a second I was reading that they were considering sending Wonder Woman straight to streaming, and then they decided to push it.
They might though. They still might, because there's only
maybe they'll change their mind.
How long are you going to push this stuff? Like, everyone's being pushed. It's going to Christmas and to the winter holiday.
And then you're going to have like 100 big blockbusters for Christmas. Like, that's not going to be a thing.
Well, not only that, but there is a very good possibility that this thing comes back in the winter.
Right. That and there's another wave of it.
There's another wave of it. Yeah. So, and even if everything's okay, how many people are going to the theater? Yeah. Like, how many people are really going to go to the movie theater? Personally, my love-hate relationship with movie theaters has happened since I was a teenager, where I've always said they've had a combative relationship with their customer. They charge for food and popcorn and stuff like you're in an airport. Like, we don't know what a Coke cost in the real world. Like, there's these inflated costs there. And then for a long time, the experience wasn't particularly that great unless you spent money at a higher end theater. Like, now, AMC figured out that, like, we better put some money in. So now the seats are good. The floors aren't sticky. The floors aren't sticky. If people
God, you remember the dollar theaters, dude?
Oh, I love the dollar theaters.
But they were so gross.
They were nasty. They were so.
Like, have you ever cleaned this ever?
I mean, it was just like layers of like soda pop on the floor, and it was just it's horrible.
Back in the day when we used to leave our house and go places, Alamo Draft House was my thing. Like, that's where me and my wife went. Like, once a week we'd have a date night to Alamo Draft House because it also no phones, no talking. Like, when you go
I love those ads. I love those ads. I love those ads.
And then somebody picks up their phone in front of you and they're on Facebook and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's one thing if you're like a parent and you're like just checking real quick and it goes away. All right, I have no problem with that. But like, you're literally scrolling Facebook. Like, everyone else paid to be here too, bro. Like, go outside.
So I've always felt that they've had a combative relationship with their customer base, and now I feel that it's kind of biting them in the ass, because now the second there's another opportunity, or there's something else, they're like, you know what? I really kind of don't want to go, and now I have an excuse not to go because I don't want to get sick. That's going to be a difficult thing mentally to kind of break through the customer. Like, the customer is going to have to feel really comfortable to be in an enclosed space. And that goes for concerts. That goes for huge events. This is going to it's going to hit and film festivals. Look at South by, and and everything is happening with that. Cannes is holding in there, but that's going to,
we'll see.
Yeah, I can't see that happening.
It's just so crazy and interesting to me, because it all just is so unprecedented that there's really no, like, because, I mean, you can look all the way back to 1918, 100 years ago. Like, what is that really going to tell? You know what I mean? Like,
they didn't even know what they had no idea what bacteria was. They didn't know that washing your hands was a thing.
Yeah. and there was no home entertainment. That wasn't a thing. Now we have all these streaming services. We got Netflix. Have you seen the trailer for that new Chris Hemsworth movie that's going straight to Netflix? It looks like $100 million blockbuster.
Oh, I heard it. Yeah, who is it? Isn't that with the Russo brothers?
Russo brother. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was going to. That's going to the Netflix. That's going to Netflix.
Going to Netflix, and they produced it. And I think Joe Russo maybe wrote it. One of the Russo brothers wrote it, maybe. But it looks badass. But it looks like this massive. It is this massive tentpole project, and it's just going to. It's Scorsese's film went straight to net. So it's a different world. So that kind of throws, a wrench into the works too, of trying to predict what might be the outcome of this situation. So it's just a lot of questions from me. The only thing I land on is, we're going to keep telling great stories.
Yeah.
I don't know what the medium for delivery of those stories are going to be as far as the main, will theaters start to take a much bigger backseat and be less of a thing? For the first time ever, I would say maybe, but are they going to go away? I would say no way. But who knows? Who freaking knows? This thing is so crazy.
I mean, look, remember when home video wasn't a thing? I remember going to my first video store when I was in 84. It was in New York. And I went to my first video store when we rented Flashdance. It's fucking how old I am. We rented Flashdance and we watched it on the top loaded. It was a top loaded VHS.
I remember.
It was a top loaded tank of a VHS, and we watched it. And I remember walking into a video store, and I remember, I worked in a video store when I was in high school, so I worked there for 4 or 5 years. And I remember that was home video wasn't a thing. No one ever thought that was going to take over. No one ever thought that DVDs were going to do the thing. No one ever thought that streaming was going to be a thing. And now we're saying no one ever thought that movie theaters weren't going to be a thing. And if they aren't, and if you look at the current model of business, let's talk a little bit about money here. In the current business model, in order to justify a $200+ million tentpole, there has to be a theatrical revenue stream to justify it. You can't make Avengers for Disney Plus. You might be able to get away with it now.
Yeah.
Right now you can't. So. But you can do it now because they still only have 20 million subscribers. But when you hit critical mass in the US, let's say 200 million people sign up for Disney Plus, and that's it. Yeah. There's nobody else is going to sign up for it. Now you're spending 200 million to keep what you have, not to make more. So there's going to be a moment where that money has to drop. And so it makes sense to keep that revenue stream. You see what I'm saying? And also before, the $200 million movie was completely reliant on the U.S. box office, which now it's completely reliant on the international box office, which now, when China shut down, everyone said, what happened? What happened? And then now, Europe just shut down. Oh, shoot. And then everything just shut down. So if those revenue streams aren't there, is there a future for as many tentpoles as we're getting? Yeah,
that is a good question. That is a very good question. I think the rest of this year is gonna at least present possible outcomes. Because I think we're gonna be really heading in a direction for the next few years. I don't think we're really gonna land on this is the outcome of this happening for another 2 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. But I think, toward the end of this year, I think we'll finally have an indication, we'll have a mile marker to sort of be okay, here's what this looks like. It's where it can be predictive at that point. But right now, at least for me, I don't know. But I'm curious and hopeful, and my fingers are crossed because I certainly don't want theaters to go away.
I don't either. I think
I love that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing also, I feel that there is going to be some casualties in the business, meaning our companies. Companies are going to go down, and studios are going to be either go down or get acquired. Big studios that we know of and have grown up with. Look, Fox just got bought, for God's sakes, by Disney. Yeah. So, if Fox could get bought, there's 4 or 5 other studios that were lower on the totem pole that could easily be purchased by Apple, Google, Facebook, any of those big guys who have those guns. The landscape is going to change in such a way that nobody really knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen.
I think it's most definitely going to accelerate the acceptance of and the draw to streaming. I mean, we're already headed there, but obviously that's just going to accelerate. Like the acceptance and adoption of it from some of the major studios and players, I think is going to happen far quicker than it was going to. But that's just kind of obvious, I think, because what other option is there? It's don't, or there's this.
Yeah, and I'm curious about this whole $20. I call it premium TVOD that they have. Like Trolls came out today at $20.
Yeah,
like I want to see numbers. How many people are paying $20? I feel that's a fair number for a family.
But that's what they charge anyway. Like it's usually about $19.99 when a brand new movie comes to iTunes. So it's not even an inflated cost.
But who's buying? Yeah. Who's buying movies nowadays? That's the other thing. Like I know I've seen TVOD numbers. No, but you come from a different generation though. Yeah, you come from a moment
I buy it for the special features. If I could rent the special features, I totally would.
But the point, but you're an anomaly. Like you're a very small market. Like you're a filmmaker. Very true. You're a filmmaker, and you also come from a generation where we were used to purchasing these things, because that's the only way. So we had physical media libraries and DVDs and things like that. But there's a generation that expects all this for free, or expects it as part of their subscription model,
or just feels free because their parents pay for this thing and they never have that experience of it.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see also how much longer. I'm really curious. Is
it that to rent? Like what does it cost to rent Trolls
for a brand new? Like if you were going to rent? No. It's $20 period. It's $20.
Oh, to rent it.
Yeah. It's not. You're not buying it for $20. It's renting it for $20 because it's premium. Okay. It's like going to the theater.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's not available.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's not. So you're paying a rental now. If you're going to go out to the theater and you want a first run movie, and you have a couple and you've got kids, that's an $80, $90. If you get popcorn and stuff, it's $80, $90, $100 to go out to the movies. And if you got a full family or you're going out with friends, it could easily, go past 3 figures. So $20 for home, and you have a nice system at home, it's not outrageous, but I'm used to paying something else in this environment.
Exactly. And the psychology of it, I think is what you're saying is because also a ticket costs me, let's say $15.
Right.
But then I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is $20 kids movie. Are you kidding me? When really, like you said, in actuality, I'm buying my ticket, my wife's ticket, my kid's ticket. Then we're getting popcorn, and it inflates to like this $80 affair. But it's like $20 for a cartoon just to rent it. That's out because of the psychology of like exactly what you said in this space.
So I'm really curious on what those numbers are going to be like because they have released a bunch of them already, and some they have to. They have no other way to make any money with them.
Oh man! I meant the numbers because they don't really. The streaming numbers are always pretty confusing. They're not as cut and dry as box office numbers,
right? And this is not a part. This is not a thing. Like premium TVOD number this weekend box office. That's not a thing.
TVOD.
So I'm curious to see what those numbers really are and if they're making. I know they're not making. I know Trolls is not going to make $20 million, $30 million. Yeah. I just don't see that in this.
I've never looked much into streaming numbers. Is there somewhere that posts those numbers like you do?
There is and there isn't. I have some back end friends who work at some of these places that shown me numbers.
I'll have to get behind the scenes like that.
But I would see some of these numbers. And I'd be like, oh, so that tentpole movie made $50,000 this week. Oh, okay. Like in TVOD, I'm like, oh, right. I mean, I personally think TVOD is dying a slow and miserable death because no one's renting. It's very difficult to rent or purchase. Most people are waiting for Netflix, waiting for it to be part of their subscription model. It's just they're like, there's just so much good stuff to watch. I don't need to go out unless it's if it's Avengers. Like I'd pay $20 to see Avengers. I would rather see it in a theater, but I would pay $20 for the next Marvel movie. I'd probably pay $20 for Black Widow. I might pay $20 for Wonder Woman. These big, extravaganza kind of films, spectacle films. I might do that. And that's a big might, do that. But I mean, Onward, the Pixar movie, it was 1 week in premium TVOD, a week in rentals, like normal, and then it's in freaking Disney Plus. Like 2 weeks later, I was like,
"Yep,
what's going on? What's going on? Like,
explain."
I don't understand. So the business, it's like we are in an upside down, bizarro world right now. I don't think that I've been saying this for a while, that the money that's being spent in streaming is a bubble. Like, you can't keep that spending, just buying catalogs, buying libraries, $100 million for this Friends thing, and another 150 for all the South Parks and all this stuff. And they're just buying content because it's kind of like a space race, if you will, a streaming race, or streaming wars, as they call it.
Streaming wars. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. To try to bring everybody in. But I think a lot of that is based on future projections of growth. But if those future projections of growth are not there, or slowed because of what we're doing, how much Netflix is so in the hole. Netflix is billions in the hole, and they're leveraged to the tilt because they're just trying to grab market share. They're trying to grab market share. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go, dude. I mean, it's a weird world we live in.
Yeah. Same here, man. I have no solid predictions. I just have, optimism, hope toward, story, and that's about it. And then it's like, well, I guess we'll see, Yeah, it's crazy. Man,
have you seen any noticeable jumps in your numbers from traffic and stuff since the Corona thing? Like, more people finding you?
Our numbers have gone up quite a bit. However, our other show hasn't. Under my company, Triune Films, we also have another show called Variant, which is about comic books. But that has pretty much, stayed even keel. And I've noticed other channels didn't. I wasn't really seeing a boost there either. So it's probably more along the lines of the content we're putting out that people were just attaching to because we're doing the contest of we're all stuck at home. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. So it seems to be people are just, responding to that more. Maybe I don't really know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see in the months ahead as we do different content, if it goes back to normal or if it, we'll see. Because it all kind of hit at the same time. Like, there's been a little bit of a slowdown in Film Riot as some behind the scenes stuff was worked on. Mm-hmm. So that's been a little more slow goings, and just as of a few weeks ago, we started ramping back up, and this hit. So I don't really know which thing is doing that, because there's three things happening at once, and maybe it's all of the above that's doing that. So I can't really tell, because everything else other than that seems to be no difference. So I'm not really sure.
So since you are a YouTube OG, I have to ask you the question. If you were going to start a YouTube channel today, is it a viable way to make a living?
I mean, I think it's as viable now as it was then. It's just a stupid idea. It's just like getting into the industry. It's the same thing. If 100 people do it, maybe one of them might be able to find some,
success.
Success, and maybe 1 out of 100,000 might find actual solid success, and maybe 1 out of 1,000,000 might find longevity in that success, and that seems very much to be the case across all sorts of media of this kind. And it's just, and I mean, Film Riot, at first I started as a show called Making the Film, which in an episode we put up one of those original episodes. It was just unbelievably bad, but I did that for free because YouTube didn't make money. There was no monetizing at the time. There was no money to be made. So that came from sponsors. But how am I going to get sponsors? And I didn't even know that was a thing yet. So I had no aspirations of money out of the thing to start with. I was just doing it for the love of it. And then it got picked up by Revision 3. And then they blew my mind with, oh, you can put sponsors on this and you can actually make this a job. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry, this can make money? And then that happened, and it didn't make me any money I had a full-time job for I think it was over a year before I was able to finally quit my full-time job and focus on this. And then even that, it was several years before I could pay anyone else other than myself, really. So it was me doing everything by myself. And then finally I was able to, and it was bit by bit. It took years to turn it into a thing. It wasn't like, you have people who, go on and hit for doing this or that, but that candle ends up burning out. It's the ones that put in that it took a long time to build and understand. And it's kind of like you were saying earlier, the maturity that comes with it, I think, is what leads to longevity, because it's been really hard. And then sometimes your views are really good and sometimes they're not. And sometimes you're getting a great rate from sponsors. And sometimes they're like, listen, dude, you're getting 30,000 an episode. We're not paying you that. And you're like, great. So then you have to have multiple legs. It can't just be this one thing, this one basket. You got to have multiple shows and a store. And you're also doing work on the side that no one will ever hear about, but it helps pay the bills.
Diversifying your revenue streams.
Exactly. Diversification is everything. My dad always posed it to me as like, which is probably, he probably got it from somewhere, but he's like, if you're going to sit on a stool, you need 4 legs, right? And I'm like, yes. He's like, take off one of those legs and now sit on the stool. How comfortable is it? I'm like, oh, he's like, now take off 2 legs. Now how you doing? Oh, now have 1 leg on that stool. Are you able to sit on that stool? Nope. He's like, there you go. He owned a company, and
I'm going to steal that. That's amazing. It's so good. So good.
And that's what he taught me that since, I was young, because he owned a company. And so he really understood what that meant so he's been quite a mentor to me as far as, building a company. And I had that person to talk to help. But if it wasn't for that thinking, if it wasn't for my dad putting that 4 legs on the stool mindset in my head, I don't think Film Riot would be around today, because there's no way I would have sustained it. In fact, we just went through a period of time where we had several months without a single sponsor. We were doing Film Riot for free. It was everything else that was helping us sustain us through that time as we moved out of one thing and into another. And it had to have that so we could move into a new, path. But, it's difficult. So I guess the point I'm making is I don't think it's viable for anyone on its own. If you're going to do this, it needs to be multifaceted. There needs to be multiple things. And you need to be, regardless if it was 2009 or right now, you need to be ready, just like anything else in this industry, which has basically been our entire talk. Is you need to be ready to plant your feet in the ground and endure this thing for years and years and years and years, not chase views. We've never chased views. We do some flash speed effect every now and again because we want to, because it'll be fun, not because we know it's going to get a ton of views. And that's been one of the reasons why, our show has probably built slower than it could have. The views, are up and down a little more than. But for me, if we're chasing views, I just can't do that. I wouldn't be able to keep doing this. I don't care. I want to talk about what is the psychology between why I put together this action scene. Not just, hey, check out this cool stunt, but let's talk about the psychology. Let's talk about the intention of what's going on. What does it mean with what is happening with the camera? That stuff. And that stuff doesn't always get the most views. But it's the stuff that really matters to me. So we balance it out. So it's, I think it's that is like, are you doing something that you have to do, just like anything else? If you're doing YouTube because you want to make money, maybe you will for a little bit, but it ain't going to last, and YouTube revenue, just freaking forget it. Unless you're making millions of views every single episode, you're not making enough money to sustain. It's just not a thing. It's like the YouTube revenue, we don't even hardly pay attention to it. That's all like sponsor based or however else you could parlay that into something. So yeah, man, it's just super hard. And I think anything in the entertainment industry comes back to that same thing I said before with that Twitter question of the only question you have to ask yourself is, can you do something else? If you can, don't do this because it is friggin' hard.
And everything you just said, and obviously film shampoo prank videos. That's obviously how to make it.
Well, obviously. Yeah, obviously. Cats, shampoo pranks, and be a horrible person in vlogs, and you are set.
How about if you do a shampoo prank video on a cat while being a douche?
Bro, 1 billion views. You are the most subscribed YouTube channel in history.
Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests, sir. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today, besides the shampoo prank, cats, and being a douche?
Okay, besides the shampoo douchebag cat prank. The cat's the douchebag. I think in the sentence I just
we really should. We should do a collab. Honestly, we should do a collab and really do that video. I think and see what happens.
The cat douchebag the cat. I think it's just kind of what we've been talking about. Is you just need to do it. Everything is, for me, it's been entirely about building experience, and my entire career has entirely been about building experience. I mean, even recently, excitingly, I'm able to, which we've been open and honest about it on the Film Riot channel, and will something come of it? I don't know, but I've been able to talk to studios and stuff, and we're starting to do that thing, and being able to have these conversations and pitch the way that I've been able to pitch has been a result of the experience that I've gained from Film Riot and becoming comfortable in my voice as a filmmaker. And again, that's just all experience based. Being able to direct There Comes a Knocking like I did, or Ballistic like I did, was purely based off the experience that came before it, with each one learning from it and learning how to, not diving into the deep end right away, but dipping my toe into the shallow end of the pool, and then getting in, and then moving little by little, starting to work with a DP. I used to do it myself. Now I work with a DP. Okay, I know what that is. And he taught me all these things. Okay, great. Now we bring in a sound team, and they're teaching me what that is. Okay, great. And now I'm bringing in makeup and wardrobe, and they're teaching me. Okay, great. And then the stunt team, and then more of a visual effects team, and then a full post pipeline. And my editor's really teaching me how this pipeline works. Okay, great. Little by little, crafting that experience over the course of, it's been, 10 years publicly, but even more so after that, before that. And then even before getting to those collaborators, all the time that I put in doing it myself and spending what could take 2 hours with a crew is my entire day of shooting. When I shot my short film Tell, which we actually shot in 2008 before Film Riot ever existed. And then we released it in 2012, but we made it seem like we were shooting it now because, obviously it would be a lot more fun to feel involved in the moment. But in 2008, I didn't know anybody in film. The only person that knew anything that was happening was my roommate, who's also my cousin, who went to Full Sail with me. So we're the only two people there that know anything about film. My 13-year-old sister was the boom operator, and the actors were cool with it, which was amazing. It was tons of DIY gear. It's me operating a crane as the director, DP, sound guy. So and that took every weekend for, I don't even remember how. I don't remember how long. It ended up being like a 30-minute short film, and man, I don't know how many days it actually was. I don't think we put all the days together. We combined days to like make it faster on the show and not be so boring. But it was more days, just weekend after weekend after weekend after week, because we all had full-time jobs, and I put it all on a credit card, which I don't suggest you do. Obviously, that's stupid. But I did what I had to do, and so I think that's it. Like, getting out of your head that this is an easy road. It is not. It is a very bumpy path. And it is a very long road that might lead to a dead end. It might lead to a dead end. That's just fact. This path that I'm on, it might be a dead end, but I'm going to stay on it until I don't have a choice, and understanding those things, I think, is really important, because they're just hard truths, and it might be a thing where you end up being a filmmaker that you're making films because you're doing it yourself. No one ever opened the gate to you, That's a possibility. That's more of a likelihood than not, which is discouraging. But if you're doing it for that end goal, I don't know how far you're going to get anyway. It has to be that sickness. It has to be the passion and love for telling a story and connecting with an audience through that story. If you have that, then that's all that matters, So that would be my main bit of advice: is do it again, do it some more, and just keep going.
And enjoy the path, because if that path does lead to a dead end, and your only hope was the end goal, and you hated the path you walked, you're gonna be I always say you become that angry, bitter filmmaker. And I always, anytime I do a talk or something, I go, everybody here, we all know an angry and bitter filmmaker. And if you don't know the angry and bitter filmmaker, you are the angry and bitter filmmaker that everybody else knows.
You're the asshole.
You're the dude that if you don't know him, that means it's you.
Yeah, man. And that's actually a great way to distill it. no matter what, even if you make it, because I know we both know filmmakers who are currently doing it, and it is not the end result that's the reward, it's the journey that's the reward, that whole saying. And even in the short film realm, I've been lucky enough to make a short film, and I have an audience to put that short film out. And, I think Ballistic is over 1 million views now. So, but that's not the reward, making it was a reward. And then the journey of the audience connection to it is the reward, and then if that's not the thing, well, then now I'm on to making the next one. And that, that path is the reward. So it's like you said, you got to be happy with the path, because the end result may never be a reward.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Oh man, that is a tough one, because I'm flawless.
Obviously, I'm polishing my Oscar as we speak.
Yeah, polish. God, I feel like every other day I'm learning something that I'm like, God, I'm such an idiot. I think balance, that would absolutely be, which is a mixture of, career and life. And to my wife's credit, she is, the most patient, angelic, saint-like human being I've ever met in my life. And I think that's what all of if we're all still with someone, that's who they are. And she gently helped me arrive to a place of balance, because, I was just burning the candle on both ends the entire time. Before my kids were born, 7 days a week, minimum 15 hours a day, minimum. So my average was 15 to 18 hours a day. And then I'd roll into bed, roll out of bed, and go right back to it. That's just like legitimately what was going on. And often, especially the first year of Film Riot, I've talked about it a lot. I call it the dark days. I went 2 days without sleeping every week without fail, because I had that full-time job. And on Wednesday night, I would have to deliver the episode. So I would stay up all night. Wow. Finishing the episode, I would hit upload, put my pants on, and go right to work. I kept the pillow at work because of that. So, during lunch, I would try to take a nap. That's when I discovered Newton naps, where you keep a spoon in your hand and you lay on the thing. And then once you doze off, you release the spoon, it hits the tile and it wakes you up. And that was like these little micro naps. And it actually helped me out a little bit. And it got even worse during holidays, because then Alienware would ramp up with content. So I'm producing way more. So I'm already working overtime in Alienware. Plus there was still this thing. And, that was kind of a, what choice do I have situation. But then that way of living stuck. And that's how I worked. And it took a while, but it finally landed on, if I stop work at this time, the world's not going to fall apart. Everything's not going to burst into flames. It'll be here tomorrow. And it was really the birth of my first kid, my daughter, that clicked, like, I am not missing this. And I just regret 5 years of being married and wasting so much time that we could have been doing more fun stuff. And she was just being patient, waiting for me to figure it the fuck out, but even with my kid, she had to sit down, talk with me, and I credit my wife entirely. And she just had a heart to heart of being like, I'll follow you wherever you go. It wasn't an ultimatum, but she's like, I am terrified that in 20 years, you're going to look back and regret all the time. And I've said it on Film Riot ever since. I quoted on Film Riot ever since. At 80, I will not look back and regret the movies I didn't make. I'll look back and regret the time I missed with my family. And
Amen.
That's the lesson that has been learned. And I'm still trying my best. I've been doing better. Sometimes in this industry, it just gets hard. Right now is one of those times, to find balance. So it has its ups and downs, but for the most part, I've found a decent balance, and I've been trying to be there more, because I don't know who said it, but I so far think it's the truest thing I've ever heard is, just being there is 90% of the way toward being a good parent, know? So I've been really focusing on making sure I'm there and not like this ghost of a memory to my kids. Like that would be the dagger to the heart for me.
Very great answer to that question, sir. And quickly, 3 of your favorite films of all time that will be on your tombstone. Go.
Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Alien. God, I have a bunch. Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible. Can I add two? Can I have four?
Sure. How about that Jaws thing sitting behind you?
Ooh, Jaws is up there.
Yeah.
Basically any film from Rope, Rear Window, Dial M for Murder, Psycho.
You truly don't understand.
Every Fincher film ever made.
You truly don't understand the topic of three, do you?
This hurts me. This hurts me so much. I was at everybody knows who watches the show. Everybody knows my sick love for Jurassic Park, and it's just because Jurassic Park changed my world. I was already making stuff for my family, but when I saw Jurassic Park, I was 11, and it was an experience I had never had because I wasn't allowed to watch movies like that.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it really was an experience that no one had, but I wasn't
11.
allowed to watch movies of that. Yeah, at 11. And so I felt so unsafe in this safe place. So after that, I became obsessed with this Spielberg dude. Who's Spielberg and what's a director? Because that's what I want to do. And once I figured that out, it was just so that's my plus it's just an incredible film, but that's my massive admiration for that film is that's what made me realize what I specifically wanted to do, what I've been already pursuing and not knowing. And two, that experience that I felt as an audience member has been something that I've been chasing ever since.
Now, where can people find you and the work you do, sir?
You can just go to filmriot.com and pretty much everything's there. Of course, we're on YouTube as well at youtube.com/filmriot. But filmriot.com has pretty much everything, including the podcast we do and a page to connect with any of us, so our social media, all that.
Man, it has been a pleasure talking to you, Ryan, for the second time.
We just nailed out two podcasts.
Two full-blown podcasts. Thank you.
Killing it.
Thank you, quarantine. But brother, man, thank you so much for not only being on the show, but for all the good work you've done for the community for the last over a decade of work and all those sleepless hours that you put into the work you do with Film Riot, man. I truly appreciate, and Hustle definitely recognizes Hustle. So I appreciate everything that you do, and thank you for being on the show, brother.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me. This is a blast.
I want to thank Ryan for being on the show and dropping those knowledge bombs on the Indie Film Hustle tribe today, brother. I am a fan, Ryan. I am grateful for what you do for the filmmaking community at large and have been doing it. You are an OG in this space. So thank you again for not only being on the show, but for everything you do, man. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, including checking out some of Film Riot's awesome content, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/400. And guys, I wanted to let you know that the beta version of my new epic course on film distribution called Film Distribution Confidential, what predatory film distributors do not want you to know, is in beta launch right now. So I have 100 seats, well, actually less than 100 seats now, available for anyone who wants to jump in early at a massive discount. And you get to watch me build the course and help me build the course as I start uploading new lessons every week. And everyone who's inside so far is loving the course, really giving me some great feedback and helping me build out the most comprehensive course on film distribution for today's world that exists on the planet. So if you want to check that out, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/let me in. Thank you again for listening, guys. I am again humbled that we have gotten to this level in this podcast of episode number 400. I plan to continue going. I don't see any time in the near future where I will stop doing these. If anything, I'm adding more and more on the on my podcast plate, if you will. As you guys know, the new podcast, Filmmaking Motivation, which has been very well received when you get your weekly motivation to keep going down this path, as insane as it might be sometimes. And we, of course, launched the IFH Podcast Network, which is going to be housing some of the best filmmaking podcasts and screenwriting podcasts around, as I personally will be curating new shows as they come in. We are adding new shows all the time. So if you want to check out what we have, and if you want to discover some new podcasts, if you don't have enough to listen to with me, you can head over to ifhpodcastnetwork.com. I appreciate you, and I thank you guys so much for giving me the privilege of doing this for you every day. Thank you again, and as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.